2017 at 7 p.m. is now called to order. Work session items. We have 5 items on the work session listed B through F. Presentation of a US 31 corridor study, discussion of potential redevelopment of the Manistee Ironworks property, discussion on economic development funding, presentation of quarterly strategic plan update, and a discussion on deputy finance plus deputy treasurer position. At this time, we would entertain public comments on work session related items. If you have a comment you'd like to make on a work session related item, please come forward, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Are there any public comments? Since there are no public comments, we will move on to item B, presentation of a US 31 corridor study. County Planner Bob Carlson.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here. I'm Rob Carson. I'm the County Planning Director with Manistee County, and with me is Tamara Baswinka.
Good evening.
We have a very condensed version of the corridor plan presentation for you this evening. Typically, it runs about 45 minutes. We're going to try to do it in 5 minutes. So if it seems a little choppy, it's because I deleted a whole lot of slides today, just a little while ago. But with that, about a year ago, we embarked on a corridor planning process, which incorporated all of the communities located along the US 31 corridor: Pleasanton Township, Bear Lake Township, Bear Lake Village, Manistee Township, Brown Township, the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, the City of Manistee, and Filer Township. We solicited input from each of those communities, had a stakeholder represent on a leadership team for each of those communities, and the content that we're going to present to you this evening is a very condensed version of what's contained within the plan itself. If you would like to view a copy of the plan, it's available on the Manistee County Planning Department website. Under Planning Department, there is a tab for US 31 Corridor Plan, and you can download the PDF directly from our website. So with that, I'm going to go right in. We inventoried a lot of existing conditions along the length of the entire corridor. We created 2 different GIS data sets, one point file for buildings, one parcel polygon file for all parcels adjacent to the corridor. We tabulated a lot of information for both the structures and the parcels along the corridor, and what you can see on the map on the screen there is a compiled data overlay that contains abundant information from location of wetlands, hydrology, steep slopes, the density of commercial structures, residential structures, where our existing infrastructure is located at. And what this does is this helps us to identify through a data-driven process what the corridor looks like character-wise along its length. Obviously, those of us who live here know as we traverse the corridor what it looks like, but when we can throw some actual data behind it to find where we actually change from one character to a different character along the corridor, we can represent that data much more clearly within a planning document. We solicited quite a bit of public input throughout the process. We held 6 drop-in sessions located at locations along the corridor, which we were at for about 2 hours. We had residents come in and take surveys and look at a number of different images and sectionals for the corridor, and then vote on what they felt they liked personally and desired for character along the corridor. The top public input desires were landscaping, both public and private, so within the right-of-way trees and so forth, and then on private parcels as well. Signage, monument style, as well as wall style signage is what the residents voted in favor for, and lighting that is oriented towards the pedestrian. They also would like to see increased pedestrian and non-motorized use along the corridor. It's rather limited right now to basically the City of Manistee and Bear Lake Village, and they would like to see that extend out into some of our suburban areas, both Filer Township, Southern Manistee Township, and Northern Bear Lake Township. They would like more of a focus on site design, which entails how the building is situated and has access to the corridor and how it's oriented with other buildings in its vicinity, rather than what the actual use is within the building. The use is secondary. This is called form versus use, and that'll be covered by Tamara a little bit here. They would like to see focused development, preservation of our rural and agricultural areas. A lot of people that traverse the corridor like the view sheds that are presented along it, and we need to think about that as we move forward, preserving our agricultural land, which is a sound industry for Manistee County, and we should promote that through lower density in our rural areas. So in our rural areas, they like to see areas for agricultural production, natural vegetation, so no staged landscaping requirements, views of the lakes, the orchards, open space along the corridor, buildings set back from the corridor itself so that it lends to that rural view shed, existing overhead utility lines maintained, and 2 travel lanes and at key intersection decel lanes for left turn and for right turns. In our suburban areas, landscaping along the roadway with separation of our walkways and our roadways. So landscaping between the sidewalk and the roadway, basically. Designated pedestrian sidewalks and or bike lanes. Signage in monument form or on the wall of the building instead of tall pole signs, which we see in some areas of the corridor. Single row of parking in front of the building with the remainder on the side or the rear. And 0 lot line allowances, so allowing the buildings to be brought closer to the roadway to have a greater aesthetic appeal and functionality, with people being able to access from the right-of-way much easier. 2 travel lanes, potential for a boulevard in some areas with controlled left turns, specifically that was mentioned for sections of Manistee Township, and utilizing buried utility lines along our suburban portions of the corridor. In our urban areas, very similar to our suburban areas, landscaping along the roadway and the walkways, and I do want to mention the street trees look great in front of the brewery. The designated pedestrian sidewalks, signage in monument form and on the building, parking in the rear or on street, 0 lot lines allowances so we can bring the buildings closer to the roadway, true travel lanes with a center turn lane, and utilities buried with pedestrian level lighting.
So after gathering all that data and speaking to so many people, you then want to go back into best practices to see how corridors throughout the nation and within Michigan particularly are functioning at a very high level, meaning the ones that are channeling investment within their corridor and they're not decaying and folks are not leaving. After all, when you think about a corridor, especially in Manistee County, US 31 is our main street. It's our common main street. And so one of the things that is very evident from these high quality, high functioning corridors is that they focused attention on access, activity, and aesthetics. So they're looking at how the traffic is moving up and down the corridor, how it's interacting with the development on the land adjacent to the road. They're looking at the activity, so what's going on the property next to the road, and also as a human being, our interaction as we try to navigate the corridor, whether we're in a car, in a bike, or we're walking. And aesthetics, how does it look? If it doesn't have a certain look, then it doesn't have a certain appeal, and you might not have the investment that you're really looking to attract. And so best practice, and it's actually not even best practice anymore, it's more this is the way it's being done, is to really look at form over function, to really spend a lot of time more concerned with how that development looks rather than what happens inside of that building, and that's called basically form-based codes. And this plan sets up the stage for us to really dive into that topic and really understand how the use going on inside the building it really doesn't matter. We want really great uses going on, but what we want to make sure is that that building has a certain look, it's positioned in a certain way, and that we as human beings, as we navigate the corridor, interact with that, because that's going to dictate whether we want to be there. And if we don't want to be there, someone's not going to want to invest there. So what we did was, as Rob alluded to, we looked at the entire corridor, looked at the data, and really developed character zones. So this So when you look at the full plan, what you're going to notice is that there are 5 different zones. And you and I, we travel the corridor all the time. We can already see where these zones are at, but this quantifies it, and it will help develop the regulations that will go into keeping the character that already exists and supporting that. So C5 is the urban, C4 is suburban, C3 is transitional. That's really the area between rural and a suburban. C2 is the rural ag, and C1 is environmental preservation. And so I'm just going to fly through these to show you the entire corridor. And you can see the letters. It's a small map, but once you get into the plan, you'll see how these plans, how these character zones rather, are positioned. So this is the village of Bear Lake, and you can see the urban area as you go out to an environmental preservation area, as you go out to the rural area. And here we are around Manistee. Obviously, we are urban, but as you move out towards Manistee, you're going to see more suburban. And so as you develop these character zones, we're going to match up the regulations with these characters to try to support that and enhance it and make it even more appealing for investment. And I did show these pictures to you last week, so we already had a spoiler, but this is in front of the A&W. If we did all the work that we're hoping to achieve through this plan, we'll get products that look like this. This will happen not because we're making nonconformities. That is not what we're looking to do. What we're looking to do in areas that are already developed, as new proposals come through or existing proposals or existing businesses want to do additional work on their business, ask them to kind of adhere to this kind of standard. And what you see is a line of trees separating the road from the sidewalk to buffer the pedestrian who's walking from the road. We see pedestrian height lights, we see monument signs, and we see 3 lanes rather than 4 with a center turn lane, which will hold the same amount of traffic, but will just help the flow of traffic. Here's an area, just north. This is what we would achieve if we accomplish what we're hoping to accomplish. We've got the road, we've got an on-road cycle lane, we've got the buffer area of trees in between a building that is brought to 0 lot line, so it's brought further. We have outdoor seating, we still have a view of the lake, and we have people who want to walk along the road, and they're doing that safely, rather than what we do see now in some of these areas where they're walking on dirt paths. Or quite often we see them walking on the road themselves. Here's the transitional zone we were talking about. This is obviously Bear Lake Township in between the village and really the more rural area. So we're not talking about not allowing development here, but if we do, this is what we're looking for. This side of the road, is an existing golf course. That's a great use in traditional. This side of the road already has commercial development. So over here you see the pedestrian height lighting, you see a sidewalk. On this side we're going to still have a row of landscape trees, but we're going to see on-road cycle lanes. And in our more rural areas, we're not talking about not having development at all. Of course we want development, but this is what we're envisioning, something like this. And this is where a really great example of form over use rather. This barn, great use, absolutely, a great building rather. Inside of it, we're not so concerned about that. As a matter of fact, we hope it's a machine shop or it's a processor. But we don't notice that. It doesn't have that hard edge to it. It looks very rural. And then, of course, you see the ag occurring. And in the environmental preservation areas, nothing would happen. And we don't have many of those areas. But these are the wetland areas and the steep slopes. Those areas should not be developed anyway. So, I thought you got rid of that. So what we need to do, though, is take this plan to the next step, which is work with all the communities along the corridor to evaluate their zoning. There's going to be some work that's going to need to be done. One of the things that came out of this analysis is that there's a lot of commonalities already existing within ordinances. So it's really not going to take that much to provide that unified kind of regulatory framework that everybody, that will really speak to developers. And as a community that is the first of the 10 of redevelopment-ready communities in the state of Michigan, you understand that developers like reliability, predictability, like timeliness, and they want to come into communities where it is easy to understand the regulations and navigate them. Form-based codes will do that, and this effort is meant to support that and to make that atmosphere and that culture of yes possible. So if there are any questions, Rob and I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll go. How, you kind of talked about the changes being made when the business changed their building or their driveway. Is there any other plans for funding? How would we fund this? How would we pay for this?
If you would like to, but really the goal is, as new development comes in, they will have a very clear set of direction on how to develop a vacant property. For existing properties, we can certainly seek grants to do streetscape improvements. In lieu of grants and other types of funding sources, we're going to have to wait to see those properties turn over and new folks occupy those buildings and hope that they come in and want to do something new, and we can help them bring their property up to existing standards. But one interesting thing that when you read the plan you'll note is that all buildings, pretty much all development that has occurred in the county within the last 5 and certainly last 10 years are meeting these standards already. They already have monument signs, and they already have great landscaping, and they're already doing a lot of them already have sidewalks. We missed some opportunities with Meyer, but so existing properties, that's a little tricky. We're not trying to create nonconformities, and so we're just going to have to keep working and fighting the good fight to get those to come up to those standards. But I think that if we keep working, we can find opportunities.
Yeah, there's no call to do any type of retroactive where you make a business pull a sign down, tear up a parking lot, put landscaping in. It's all when it changes use, when it changes ownership, buildings are torn down eventually. It's taking a proactive approach on that stance.
Well, I look at a corridor right now, and one of your illustrations is the A&W restaurant here in Manistee. Right past that is the China Buffet. Right past that is the video store. And then on the corner is a Shell station. So it would take a number of businesses turning over or buying in. You're not just going to have this occur in front of one of 3 or 4 storefronts coming down. I guess the next thing I look at, you talk about zero lot lines and step out access to the right-of-way. At First and US 31, when I pull up and keep my bumper back from encroaching the white line that's there for traffic, you cannot see traffic coming from the north because of the building and the zero lot line they have on that building right there. And I think one of the things we're going to have to look at is obstructions and such. We have a number of those, and we could end up building more of them. My question is, what kind of timeline do we look at? And then with Ms. Blakely from our planning and zoning, we've just gone through a long-term laborious process. Councilman Whitliff was instrumental on the Planning and Zoning Commission to get redevelopment ready certified and completely redo our master plan. How much more modification of that? Because I'm sure it doesn't include requirement for monument signing as opposed to other forms of signing and such.
Well, I'd invite Denise to speak up if she wants to. I can say, in working with Denise on your master plan, that it already identifies form-based code. Mm-hmm. And your zoning ordinance already has the stipulations for monument signage, wall signage, landscaping, and I know Denise can get more.
Yeah, right now the only place we actually allow pole signs are on US 31. So that would require an amendment to the zoning ordinance for signage if we decided to be proactive in the future. This is a really good vision, a good place to start.
I'm not doubting it. It's a good vision.
Yeah, and we did, especially Rob and I worked specifically on the master plan for form-based code along US 31, knowing that it is not the most attractive portion of the city, and that would allow a lot more flexibility for use in zoning if we went with form-based code along 31.
So correct me if I'm wrong, and this is, I want to repeat back to you what I think I'm hearing. I think I'm hearing that you want to put a plan in place up the 31 corridor, up and down the 31 corridor, so that everybody is on the same page, so to speak, that the ordinance, when somebody comes in with a new building, there's an ordinance in place. Everything is in place to comply with this plan. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, Roger, yes.
What we have right now is we have a hodgepodge of different regulations and standards as you move along the corridor. And to be quite honest with you, from a developer's perspective, they aren't necessarily looking at whether they're going to locate in the city of Manistee or Manistee Township or Filer Township. They're going to look at a number of building sites. And the less codes that differentiate from one another that they have to dig through, the easier that is for the development process to move forward much more fluidly and quickly. And so by us working and trying to get all of the communities to work together to get some coordination where the standards align, when a visitor comes through here, they're really probably not noticing when they cross over from Filer Township to the city of Manistee. They may see the sign, they may not, but they're not probably seeing it as they're going to Manistee Township. If they're moving through, we're hoping to capture and keep them here to shop at our businesses, to go to our restaurants, stay in the hotels, enjoy the beaches, enjoy the lake, catch salmon, whatever it may be. But they aren't necessarily identifying when they move from one community to the next. The development community is, though, because the development community is the one being burdened with, okay, now I've got to hire my attorney or whoever I'm hiring to go through this zoning ordinance, and this zoning ordinance, because I have 3 different building sites in 3 different communities, and all the regulations do not align.
By having this plan in place as a person who does planning for our community, makes it really easier in the future when you're updating your master plan and when you're updating your zoning ordinance to keep that in the forefront of your consideration. This isn't a plan that's going to be implemented in 5 years, 10 years. It's a living document, just like a master plan is. So I would say this probably has a shelf life of about 20 years of implementation time.
Well, we did that with sidewalks. We made it mandatory that if you build, you put in a sidewalk. I can see probably that's the first phase. The first phase is to get everybody on the same page when it comes to what it's going to look like and what the ordinances are. And that could be, it could be done, but it's going to be interesting.
It's a timely process.
Yes,
It'll be a timely process. You are much more ahead of the curve than a lot of the other communities along the corridor, though, in terms of how your zoning is, and that's structured right now.
Thank you for,
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
I just want to say I appreciate all the work you guys did and the residents that came to be a part of this planning. I think it's a good start.
Item C, discussion on the potential redevelopment of the Manistee Ironworks property. City Manager.
Yes, staff has been working with a representative of a group of investors that are interested in redeveloping the Ironworks building. They've shared several renderings of what their plan entails. They're here tonight to talk about it. They're looking at a mixed-use redevelopment that would address a lot of community needs. And the linchpin is that they would like to have a marijuana grow facility and then build around that to meet the community needs. I think it's an exciting concept, and you know, we want to just get it out there to council and the community to take a look at it, get some input, and so that the developers can move forward, hopefully. So I'll turn it over to Ken Armour. He's a gentleman that we've been communicating with and meeting with on a regular basis. So Ken, if you want to lead it off.
Hi, Ken Armour, 325 4th Avenue. I've been,
Five.
what do you say?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
It's not a public comment period. This is your time.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure how to form, but we've been coming up here. I've been coming up here 12, 15 years. My first condo was Shipwatch, so I'm quite engaged in the community. And my passion is construction. That's what I'm in development. I brought along Jim, the architect, who's been working with Thad, Denise, and trying to get some feedback from you guys. Really, we wanted to show you what we've came up over the last couple months, at least to hear some feedback and see what your thoughts are. We've teamed up with a group out of the east side who are professional growers, and they're affiliated throughout the United States, California, with other places. So we think we've got a pretty well-rounded team. One of the partners is the guy who did Lighthouse Landings, Shipwatch. He's not here tonight. Rick Sherrick, he owns the marina still. But I guess I can turn it over to Jim, show you what we got, and we're looking forward to hearing what feedback you guys think. I think it would be great for the community, everybody involved, but obviously it's your community, so we'll see what your thoughts are.
Thank you. My name is Jim Brody. I'm from Create 3 Architecture. My address is 645 Oakley, Northwest Grand Rapids. The presentation here shows some sketches of a site plan, 2 floor plans of approximately a 6.43 acre site. You probably are all familiar with the site, so some of these are redundant photographs. But some of them are there so we can present to you what we would like to, our vision of what the building and the site could become. The proposed site plan on the south corner is the Ironworks building, and then its adjacent building towards the north is where the Class A grow facility would be, which is in the gray area right there. The railroad runs down to the south, out to the river, and we talked a lot with Denise and Thad about continuing along the riverfront walk that would go around a community amphitheater right along that railroad that would house probably 200 to 300 people, and some new docks for yachts or boats. There's approximately 19 shown there. There would be a private entry for houses, cottages, and then three buildings of townhomes. On the south side, with the light tan and the elongated gray structures, we originally envisioned having rail cars to bring back the old history of that railway coming through there, and gutting those rail cars and having an outdoor communal market. Ken called me this morning and had a wonderful idea that perhaps instead of having the market, which we also proposed for the interior of the Ironworks building, but instead of getting sleeping cars and putting them there and refurbishing them, also adding to a boutique hotel type atmosphere where people could stay either if they wanted to come in off their boats and stay there in those rail cars, or they could just travel there and stay there overnight or for the weekend. These are just some views. It seems that the rail car is definitely a large emphasis within this site. The Ironworks Cafe, we have also planned for that to stay within the vision. These are some pictures that kind of show the vision of a communal gathering of this amphitheater where we could have small venues, perhaps of music, entertainment of sorts. These even show fountains for kids to run through. But this is part of our vision to bring a communal feel of multi-use, different diverse people, ages, economic backgrounds to this site to enjoy the riverfront and to enjoy the historical aspect of that building. This is a larger amphitheater, but you can see how many people have gathered around the riverfront there in that amphitheater. This would be a sleeping car, and the interior is potentially what we could do. We could do a very quaint historical interior, or we could even do a modern, luxurious interior on the top right there. Proposed housing styles, we would definitely stick with the older shingle style aspect to bring some of the rail vision back into that site. We could do a more historically correct building on the left there that brings back the shingle style, the more massive beams and stone. Or we could do a transitional style like the top left, or a contemporary style where even the bottom one shows like a salt box with simple shakes on there that would bring back some of the railway workers of the time. But we could also do a very contemporary interior that to bring in the multifaceted economic backgrounds. The proposed main floor plan vision, the gray area to the left of the plan is the Class A grow facilities, which these two gentlemen will talk about after myself. That's about 29,000 square feet on the main level. To the right, the gray area along the street, along River Street, are retail spaces, potentially a winery, a distillery, a small restaurant, and an interior courtyard that has a venue of maybe artists with 10 by 10 stands, or people selling goods and wares in there to bring the community inside. The pink area would be a convention center. The one would hold approximately 200 to 300 people, and the top one would hold approximately 20 to 35 people, so you could have a variety of different groups come in. The brown portion that's on the bottom left of that would be a smaller restaurant for the hotel that would have a bar as well. This is a small, my first house I bought was in Ferndale, Michigan. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but this was a CVS on the corner of Woodward and 9 Mile when I lived there. I went back there last weekend for a concert in Ann Arbor, and this CVS is totally gutted, and they made it an artist market. And I was spellbound by, this is almost exactly what had been our vision for the interior of the ironworks space. Right in this tall area, this is an existing picture of the ironworks building. But this community brought in a car. They spread out T-shirts, sell their T-shirts there. They have small little venues along the way. On the right-hand picture down on the bottom, someone took all old windows, cut out the glass, and made their own venue in there. There's a wide variety of people sell candles, artwork. One venue had beard oil for people with beards. So it was called an interesting collage of things going on there. They had an indoor communal space made out of pallets, little booths that were in there to have reading for the college kids. And I saw a couple of younger kids even get in there and start playing on their iPads while I was there.
And obviously, as Thad was saying, the linchpin, as you are all aware, is the ability to grow. Some of the things that we've been talking about, and we've been running Mike Canuti around quite a bit, is what we would like to see, obviously, with your approvals. But some of the things are that CBD oil. It doesn't have any of the THC or anything like that. But if we could turn the front half into somewhat interactive, where people can come in and see maybe the processing, where the people, they're wearing the doctor scrubs and they're actually making the oils, and either some of the plants, growing some of the plants, all the way to Mike's meeting with a couple groups for us that are indigenous people that have a history of working with hemp. So we're kind of really excited if we can get them to commit to doing some form of a hemp museum there that would take up 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. So it would truly be interactive, where people would go in an experience as opposed to sitting on an iPod. I think it's the wave of the future. I mean, you see where it's heading, where it's going. As a community, I would encourage, I mean, not from a selfish standpoint, but you want as much out of it as you can, and I think we're prepared to offer the best win-win proposal for such a thing. But that's what I would like to see, but I don't know how, you know, how much you want to allow the community should see with that right now. But I think it would really be a cool destination building, keeping the heritage, the rail, and all this other stuff too, the products that are made with hemp and the souvenirs that could fit into the farmer's market quite well. But those are just some thoughts that we're looking for some feedback on.
The proposed upper floor would also, the gray area would be for the Class A grow facility towards the left. That's an additional potentially around 31,000 square feet. The gray area along the southeast side would be boutique hotels, something Thad and Denise had said that's something the city really needs, our hotel rooms. So each one of those is a pretty substantial hotel room, probably bigger than you would get at the Days Inn. And then the brown area down there is potentially 3 condos. And then the dark area is the roof of the lower level. So what we're kind of, you can see all these multi-uses, and as Ken had been saying, we're trying to get all these people together, from people that are going to be there permanently, people that are going to be visitors, transient, in and out, and getting them to come together as a community, whether it's for a weekend or whether it's for a summer or several seasons.
And the Riverwalk is the key, I think, as soon as we can get that connected, and that was a pretty strong point that Thad and Denise made right away. If we can get that, that will be one of the first things we would obviously do, but the quicker we can connect this entire space with downtown, I mean, we all know that the traffic that goes up and down that would bring people to this interactive type theater.
Thank you.
The guys that actually run the grow facility and stuff, if they can come up, and it's Mike and Joe, they can give you a presentation on security and other questions you might have.
All right, good evening. I'm Mike Kavanaugh. This is Joe Brennan. We're from Brass LLC is the name of our company. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background on us and kind of what we're about, and as well as our partners as well. So I'll get started. So agenda is really just to talk about, really about us, who we are, talk about the founders. There's 4 founders of our company, what our goals are, and some other projects that we're working on as well. So Brass LLC is a company that was founded this year by 4 Michigan natives. We've all got a background in the cannabis industry extending back to 2010, both in Michigan and California. We've got experience owning and operating grows of many sizes, dispensaries, delivery services, and processing centers, both in Michigan and California. Our previous cannabis-related companies are known for offering high-quality, lab-tested, and award-winning products in both states. And we're pioneers in the industry with the discipline to operate compliant businesses that were among the first to be licensed in their municipalities. So the 4 founders are Cody and George Sadler, Joe Brennan, and myself. And I'll give you a little background on each of us. Cody Sadler is the youngest member of our team. He's 27 years old. He's from Ludington High School, played hockey up here for the Manistee Chippewas. He's founder of Nature's Leaf Collective in California. 4 locations that grossed over $5 million a year. He's also the founder of Platinum Vapes, which is an extract company. They average over 300,000 units per year. And one of the big things that they're known for in California is donating free meds to terminal cancer and low-income patients. They've secured one of 3 manufacturing licenses in San Diego. I was just out there on Friday meeting with the city, meeting with our attorneys out there as well, talking about future expansion plans. George is actually Cody's dad. He's 50 years old. He's owned restaurants and coffee shops in Ludington and Pentwater, co-founder of Nature's Leaf Collective with Cody and co-founder of Platinum Vapes as well. He started growing about 6 years ago. Joe, 38 years old. He grew up right in Manton. He's a Marine Corps veteran like myself, owned multiple businesses, construction and tourism. He's the founder of Mind Right, the founder of the Veterans Relief Center. I'll kind of talk to you guys about that in a little bit as well. He's the first licensed caregiver center in the city of Detroit, and started growing along with myself 7 years ago. I'm Mike Kavanaugh. I'm 33 years old. I grew up in Metro Detroit. Been coming up this way my whole life. My grandma and grandpa moved up to Ludington about 30 years ago, so we all kind of have a bit of a local connection up here. Marine Corps veteran. I did 2 tours in Iraq. I've got a bachelor's and MBA from Northwood in Midland. I'm a chief operating officer of a $200 million company right now, as well as founder of Brass, and co-founder of Mind Right with Joe, co-founder of the Veterans Relief Center as well, and started growing 7 years ago. So that's us. That's the 4 of us who represent Brass LLC. Our goals are to acquire 4 to 6 1,500 plant grow licenses for cultivating, acquire licensing for processing, dispensing. At one point, help develop the historic district over here, provide economic development to the local area, create jobs for local residents. We project to have probably a minimum of 25 jobs that range from $15 to $30 an hour jobs for the local area, and create a one-of-a-kind travel destination. So we're excited to be part of this project upon approval. We've got other projects working right now across the state, so we're working on multiple licenses all over West Michigan in a couple different municipalities, as well as Metro Detroit as well for cultivation, dispensaries, and processing centers. So that's the background. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
For right now, you guys are wanting to grow? Is that what?
That's correct.
But then over time, is that something you want to be a producer, processor, and then a dispenser?
Correct.
That would be the goal.
Is there a timeline you guys are working on, or?
You know, it's really upon your approval what you're comfortable with. So we're working on, you know, different things in municipalities across the state where we already have dispensaries and we already have processing. But, you know, ideally the perfect scenario is that you can do them all in a pretty close proximity to each other.
Can you function with 2 out of 3?
We could, yeah, definitely. Yeah, the grow is really the starting point, and you know, and the linchpin to everything is where it starts. And if you've got processing centers and dispensaries in other locations and other municipalities, you can function fine.
I think there was a discussion before because of a request from a person that wanted to come in with this process, but the focus was on a dispensary, and I think council consensus at the time was opposed to locating a dispensary within the city proper. As Mr. Taylor approached me and explained the process and has brought things to light, the primary interest is in growing and processing. And you know, my question would be, what kind of isolation do we have from the rest of the community with this? Are there fumes? I mean, are there vapors? Is there any environmental aspects and stuff, or is this a completely contained, innocuous operation?
Yeah, it's completely contained. I just went through the process in Detroit, and it's pretty extensive with your air balance reports, making sure that all your air balance are within plus or minus 5%, so that you can contain the smells. Everything is controlled with CO. You got like carbon filters, you got ozone generators, and it's done through pressure. So you can come up to my facility and put mail in the mailbox, and you're not going to smell nothing what's going on inside the facility. So that's pretty much how every facility will operate.
Is that regulated by the DEQ?
Well, for Detroit, it was the health department.
And in now you have one in California, a grow operation in California?
Our partners do. It's actually a processing facility.
Where's that?
San Diego.
Okay.
San Diego
Hopefully it's
proper,
not on
city, San
fire,
Diego.
so.
What type of security do they have, and what could you
Security
bring to
is pretty
here?
extensive. You're going to have personnel and a lot of security as far as cameras. It's nothing short of a bank.
Steel doors,
Yeah.
you've got cameras, you've got security that's there as well that monitors the facility, keeps it safe.
It's the utmost and secure. And plus, I know some cities have like to where the computers are uploaded right up into the local municipalities police department. That's something, you know, where they could have access to all the cameras. Everything is an open door policy. I have knocks on the door at my facility on a random basis to where they want to have show and tell. Used to be a little uncomfortable being where the industry came from to now, but now it's just part of my weekly, you know, routine. I'll get a knock on the door and they want to come through and show the facility since I was the first, you know, grow facility in Detroit. Kind of carved the path and we worked with the city. Kind of got pulled apart like Play-Doh sometimes by changing things, but, you know, willing to work with, you know, the city to make sure that we're meeting all their demands. But I think things like that and being open and having that open door policy makes everybody feel a lot more comfortable about the whole situation. When they can understand what's going on and knowing that it's done in a safe manner, I think that, you know, makes everybody feel a lot more at ease.
In Tulare, California, north of San Diego, of course, they've taken an old truck or a tractor facility and made it into a grow operation. They rail the product out with armed guards.
Yeah.
Is that something that?
Everything is going to be done with secured transport. That's the way that the Michigan laws are going to enforce. There is no us just putting things in a backpack and walking out the door. It's all done with secured transport, which is essentially the same thing. It's like a Brinks type service that would come there, pick up the medicine. From there, it's going to go to a testing facility. Everything is batch tested, made sure that it doesn't have any contaminants, hard metals, pesticides, things like that, mold spores. From there, then deals are brokered with the dispensaries with your product and your brand, and then from there, the secure transport will deliver the product to the dispensary, pick up the cash, and then from there, it's that part we don't know if it's deposited into the banking system or how it works with there, but everything is done with seed to sale tracking systems. I just started getting familiar with BioTrack THC, which is very big with the pharmaceutical industry. Don't necessarily like to be associated with the pharmaceutical industry, but some of the software and some of the different safety measures that they put in place are going to be copied and pasted into this industry. So the BioTrack THC is a seed to sale tracking system to where you essentially every single one of your plants is going to be maybe like livestock we can compare it to. You're going to have, you know, that specific plant, the strains, the lineage, and everything is uploaded into the software, which actually is also uploaded to a Michigan database. It's not BioTrack that won the contract. It's another
METRC. If you look online, it's METRC is the one that Michigan decided to go with. So it tracks it from the time it's a seed all the way through the time it's sold.
To actually pass, to the time it's sold, through the time where it's actually goes to the labs. It'll show the lab reports whether or not this product can make it on, you know, to the consumers, which are, you know, most of the people that are consuming in Michigan as of right now are medical marijuana patients, even though there is some recreational consumers of marijuana. That's not, I'm not going to doubt that, but it's all medical cannabis at this point, so we got to make sure that it's a medical grade quality product that they are consuming. So that's what this whole everybody coming together with the seed to sale, the processing, secure transport, it all comes together to make sure that it's one safe entity. Everything is so exciting.
It's interesting that the mayor and myself, when we were down in the Michigan Municipal League, attended a breakout session where they had representatives from the state of Michigan talking about the new medical marijuana law. And it's kind of refreshing to hear you quote back exactly what we heard down there. They track it from that seed, where it goes, right to the plant. It's just like you refer to as a ranch, a cow. It's everything is tracked. In your experience, how much checking do they do? Do they come in on a regular basis? Are they announced? Are they unannounced?
In my experience, sir, they've been coming through quite a bit. But again, I'm the first one kind of paving the path in Detroit. So they've came through a little bit more than what's going to maybe happen in the future. But at the end of the day, I kind of liked that because I had multiple different people question me. Sometimes the same, they were looking for the same answer, but they came a different route. So it kind of opened my eyes to where everybody else's, you know, train of thought is going with this. And it normally always comes back to safety, the concerns of other people in the community, which is all very big with us. we ultimately started with that. We started many years ago on a shoestring budget. We got pulled into this industry. I actually first started because actually trying to help one of my best friends with PTSD. He was going down a rough road. Not to talk too much about your personal life, but going down a rough road, seeing him getting pulled apart, seeing what pharmaceutical drugs did to him. It took it to another level of, in my opinion, it was going down a bad path. At that time, I wasn't much of a believer in medical cannabis. I didn't know there really was such a thing. I knew of bonfire cannabis, sitting around a fire and people smoking weed. Didn't really think much more of that. But it started with him, and I seen how it changed his life. He got off of pharmaceuticals, and he's the guy that's standing in front of you today. I've had the opportunity to see some amazing things. There's nobody that can ever make me a non-believer for it as a whole. There's always going to be people that are going to abuse anything. I don't care what it is, Burger King or marijuana. There's going to be people that abuse anything, but I've seen some pretty amazing things when when you have a good group of people that have some core beliefs and they stick to their guns. From the youngest patient that's came through our doors, 2-year-old Lily, was coming in with, she had epilepsy. She was having 25 to 50 seizures a day, some grandma seizures. And I'm a parent, I'm sure many of us in this room are parents, but to see something like that and just when that mother came in there and just poured her heart out to me and cried her eyes out and wanted to try anything that she could possibly try that wasn't a harmful pharmaceutical that was killing her daughter. When her very first day of treatment on Charlotte's Web, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. It's a CBD product. There's almost no THC in this product whatsoever. You could all try it right now and you would never know if you've taken anything. But within the first day of treatment, she had 0 seizures, and then after that, every day since, she might have a couple that would come up, trembles, no grandma seizures, and it's like changed the quality of life for this entire family. I'm not saying we're trying to be miracle workers, but if something is done the right way and you put passion behind it and you really believe in what you're trying to do and you're not just trying to give a sales pitch, some really cool things can happen. Not just with patients, but also with the community, pulling the whole thing together. We've always been involved with the community. We started Veterans Relief Center and did some really cool things, even when the store wasn't even holding its own. I mean, we were paying for things on our out of our own pocket, and we were trying to do fun, cool things, taking veterans down to Comerica Park and doing fundraisers and giving out presents throughout throughout our neighborhood. And that's one of those like feel good things that at the end of the day, makes it all worthwhile. And, it's kind of an honor to even stand here in front of everybody today, good, bad, or ugly, win or lose. I mean, we kind of leave it all on the field no matter what we do. And, it's kind
I
of
have
an
some
honor
questions when you have a chance. I want you to take a breath. I've been
not a good public speaker.
No, you're great. Really, that was really moving. Being from the Detroit area, whereabouts in Detroit is your facility in Detroit?
It's off of Mack Avenue, just north of Cashew.
Okay. What has been the impact on the neighborhood since you put that grow facility in there? And describe the neighborhood and its characteristics.
Okay, so that facility we took, this is actually a dispensary on Mack Avenue. So that facility was pretty run down. It was an old clothing store that was vacant for many years. Excuse me. We came in there and remodeled half of the facility, and it's kind of like how it looks in here. It's all wainscot from floor to ceiling. It's got that very nice, inviting, like if you walked into a doctor's office or something. It's, it feels very, I don't know, like it's just professional. It's warm. We used some of the old, they had antique like tin ceilings, and we restored all of that to the natural finish. It's very secure. There's buzz-in doors and things of that nature, many levels of security. And then you go into the back and there's just a small room that's operated on and comes in on a personal basis. People are not open to talk about, because it's a lot like you're a psychiatrist and you try to play that, that role. So it's private when they come back there and they're interacting with the professionals that are dispensing the marijuana.
But the grow facility is there too, right?
So nope, the grow facility is off of Groesbeck and 8 Mile. That place you would drive by it 1,000 times. You would never know it's anything other than the outside parameter of the area is very kept. It's kept well. Everything is, You know, the grass is cut, trash is constantly picked up. We've dropped some trees to make it more open. You know, the outside of the building looks very secure. There's double roll down shutters on everything. There's no windows. All of the AC, HVAC units are encased in like steel cages. A lot of external lighting, LED lighting, so that it's lit up. It's in an industrial area, but it definitely looks secure. But you would never second guess it if you.
So
see
there's
it.
no residential around it at all?
There's residential 100 feet away from the building. Every one of them within, I think it was a 200 feet radius or 150 foot radius, was giving a letter about my possible licensing process and if they wanted to come to the hearings. And nobody had anything to say. There was nothing negative.
And how
to
long
say.
has that building been there?
I've been that building itself.
Well, I mean, how long has the grow operation?
I've been growing in that building for 5 years now.
Okay,
And
I'm trying to figure out if there's been an economic change with the value of the properties around that. That's what I'm trying to dial down to.
Yes, to answer that question. So I actually essentially kind of got lucky as far as the zoning. The zoning was there wasn't a lot of areas that were zoned for cultivating marijuana, and I just happened to be there. That's where I was years before this ever was talked about in the city of Detroit. All of the buildings around me have now been rehabbed. They're also grow facilities. I'm a small grow facility. My building's 2,000 square feet. All the buildings around me are 30,000+ square feet, and they've all went to cultivating centers now. So every single one of the buildings has been since bought and developed for this industry.
And it's been well received in the residential parts?
I think
that are
so.
near
I
you?
think they like the fact that there's a lot of extra security in the area. People can walk down the street there. There is no messing around. There's just
traffic there now, so if you
Yeah.
know that area of Detroit, a lot of those buildings are vacant, and what's the most likely area that crime's going to occur or something bad's going to happen is a vacant area, especially along that south side of that 8-mile corridor. So
Well, those are pluses we want to see. So,
they were
that's
previously
why I'm trying to get
squatters in the area. We were constantly chasing people off that were illegally dumping. We've probably bought 20, 15-yard dumpsters and filled them up over the last 5 years we were there, because people would come and dump all their trash and tires and things like that. And then it would, obviously it's blight. You got rats coming in, other issues. So we were cleaning that up for years now, just to try to, keep those people out. We would make barriers. I took concrete blocks and barriered off like the entranceways of those buildings before they had people in there cultivating. So we were kind of fighting that. Now that doesn't exist at all. It's
Be kind of neat to see some before and after pictures of that.
yeah. And
I don't know if you took any
If you're ever
at that
down in the
time.
area, I'd love to. I'd love to give you a tour of. I've built out many facilities. That's kind of where my background started. Used to be a carpenter. Used to own a cabinet company years ago, and.
What gave you guys the idea to connect this to a hotel and condos and more retail and everything? I mean, has anybody tried that before? Is there anything like that?
That was my idea, to redevelop that. That's kind of my passion, is construction and development. And the only way to make that happen, if I can quote him again, was a linchpin. And I interviewed a half dozen people that grow. I'm not a grower, but that was the only way to make this thing happen. And when I came across these guys, it was hands down. I spent a ton of time interviewing people throughout the state that are doing it now, and you can imagine the stereotypical people that are doing it, the people that you run into. There was no one that came close to the professionalism as what this group did. So we kind of centered it around them, and here's where we're at. That's the only reason, to answer your question, is because we need that to drive the entire project. And obviously, with your name being on it, me living up here, planning on retiring with some other people up here, I don't want a bad name, so you got to make sure you team up with the right people. And I think you can see that, there shouldn't be any issues, but that's the connection.
Okay.
Part of that plan was developed based on conversations Ken had with Denise and I, and they were, what does the community need? Tell us what the community needs. And so it wasn't coming in pitching something. They were willing to listen to what the community needs were. And we talked about a banquet facility. We talked about some more hotel rooms and things of that nature. And they were very receptive to putting in those components because that's what the community needs. So, you know, that's, I think is really a strong point in this whole discussion, is that they're looking for ways to benefit the community.
And do you have any number in mind for economic, what are we talking about as far as the build-out of this facility?
We just brought a couple builders last week. We met up here with Mike Canuti, and we drove through, and I'm getting the budget numbers together now. So we're a little premature, but we asked if we could get on the docket and make an introduction and start getting the dialogue going. So I don't have that yet, but I should have real soon.
Because I'm kind of interested in the condos and the townhouses and all the other aspects of it, you know, what we're looking at as far as property values. The outdoor amphitheater, as such, is that going to be a public resource, or is that going to be a resource of the condo and townhouse owners? Or?
Yeah, we're asking, any project I've been involved with here, including the rickshaw, we have asked for nothing out of the community. This is all gonna be market rate. You can see that it's not a big moneymaker, condos and hotels, et cetera, in the community, but I think this will be the driving force to make it happen. That's the only thing that can make it happen. But I think connecting it to it and creating the whole community feel. But yeah, we're not asking for anything. If we can make the numbers work with the amount of licenses, and that's gonna carry the entire project, really.
Are you looking at other areas to expand to?
I got two other areas that other municipalities that I've talked to, and they're just people that I have an intimate relationship with the community, where either one of them, my attorney, is really in deep with. Here, I've obviously, me and a couple other guys plan on retiring and been up here for quite a long time. But there's two other locations that they give us a verbal, but nothing to this scope. We've got industrial buildings there, and that's it. We haven't committed to do nothing.
So you've pitched this to the other communities so far?
This project?
The grow.
Oh, yeah. I've got verbals on two other communities. They haven't voted it in yet, but they're about, one of them's a month ahead of what you guys are doing now, and the other one's about a week or two. But those are just strictly grow and dispensaries, just industrial buildings. Here, we were hoping to do something a little bit.
Are they the scope of this 29,000 square feet?
Yeah, the grow, not the construction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just take the rent, or the building out, but
Right.
And it's one of these things that, you know, I look at the facility, I mean, the Ironworks building is there, and I'm sure it can be rather economically converted to your growing and processing area, but then I look at all the auxiliary features to the building and the build-out. We've got our brewery is going to be opening here hopefully this week or early next week, and I think they're a little ahead of their original time schedule, but I mean, between the condominiums and the second building, there was a set schedule when it went through the planning commission on when they would start and stop and possible extensions and such like that. Would we have the same kind of thing here? Because I'd hate to see that all of a sudden we've got a wonderful grow processing facility and everything else kind of falls by the wayside. I mean, we'd have to have some sort of a master plan and some obligation, something that locks us down to completion of a plan.
Speaking to another city manager regarding that same question, and Thad was very clear about that too, there would have to be an agreement. Obviously, you don't want any bait and switch and somebody knocking on the door saying nothing happened. So he was very clear saying that there would have to be a timeline, because obviously the driving force would be to get the growth thing going, get these guys working and get them in action to provide. But the city, you guys hold all the cards, because talking to another city manager down south, he said, you realize that all I got to do is go to the state and petition them to yank your license, and it's done. He said, it's not a threat, I'm just letting you know. So to answer your question, absolutely, you guys have all the cards, and you always will. If anything doesn't, security, you know, any violations, anything happens, it's one phone call from you or him to the state, and all the licenses are gone. So yeah, Thad was asking the same questions, the timeline, and we were hoping, maybe a 2-year to get this thing done, and, from starting to grow to getting the hotel and the other place done, we were hoping 24, 36 months, and I think it's pretty reasonable. The building is really structural. We want to save, everything in there, and everything looks solid. It'd be a really cool project to reuse that.
I don't doubt that, but the first thing that caught my ear was that Mr. Taylor told me that they're not asking for anything. Other than an ordinance to permit. I mean, no abatements, no concessions. Are we all on the same page there?
Again, it's your game. Set up your own local, we want to tour it with the police chief or whoever once a week, once a month, or.
That just brings up a question for me, and I think I know the answer, but the state regulates you pretty heavily and involved. How involved is the local police department in this process, if at all?
I would imagine as much as they want to be involved with it. I think I said before, open door policy, and we really truly mean that. There's no funny business going on.
No, but there's no requirement that the local police be involved.
I don't think so, no, sir.
Based on the state laws right now, there's no mandate that they come in and inspect it or have any kind of visits like that. But, to Joe's point, we've always been pretty open door. The reason why this is the first facility that was licensed in Detroit is because we've had, congressmen and, people
Senator
from the city.
David Kniezek and we've been open from the beginning.
I was just looking at a commitment from the city, and what I'm hearing is there is none unless we want it to be, so.
Correct.
No, the community areas for like the Riverwalk and the
Amphitheater?
stage, yeah, those are going to be open to the public, or is it just?
No, it's open to the public.
No, absolutely. That was Thad's whole premise, which is a cool idea to get that connected. And I asked him how much he would like to see the Riverwalk being done, because we were looking at both sides of consumers, if we can pick that up. He said, you make a commitment to, as soon as we get the Riverwalk to your property, you guys extend it to the other half. So that was more than fair than what I thought. So yeah, and that's all public, because the more we can open that up and get that all the way around the peninsula to connect to the residential, that's just going to drive all those businesses and people.
Mr. Saylor, what all is involved from our part?
Mayor, as we've talked about before, the first step or the first consideration is that without council through ordinance authorizing it, nothing happens. We've talked, Mr. Taylor and Denise and I have met and talked, and our initial thought is that we would have a police power ordinance to authorize whatever license or facilities that we're talking about. I was aware that we were talking about a grow operation, and I'm hearing tonight that we may be looking at some other types of facilities. And then in connection with that, we've discussed under the zoning ordinance in the districts where it would be authorized to identify marijuana, the type of medical marijuana facilities that would be authorized to operate in those districts, but as a special use. And the thought with it being a special use is that then, if approved by the Planning Commission, there could be requirements in connection with that special use permit that's issued. And those requirements in this sort of situation likely would involve the other plan that they have besides the grow operation, the hotel or the condos or whatever else is to take place. And so initially that's been our discussion. I think if council gives direction that this is something that you are seriously considering, there's going to be a lot more work that we're going to do on our end.
Well, what kind of feelings are there on the council?
Well, I'd like to see what a proposed ordinance would look like, and obviously it would have to be drafted by our attorney, so.
We certainly can work on drafting that police power ordinance that the city attorney referenced, and also looking at the zoning component of it and bring something back for council to review.
Could you talk a little bit more about a police power ordinance? Mr. Saylor, what is that?
Well, the police power ordinance is, would be part of our codified ordinances, not our zoning ordinance. And that police power ordinance can include a whole lot of different conditions. there's some discussion, and the question was posed, well, are the city police involved? It's not required, but a lot of these types of ordinance would have involvement of the city police, whether it's inspection, dealing with the initial applications for licensing, all of the operations that are taking place that the city wants to regulate in some form, that would occur under our police power ordinance. The police power ordinance allows us, if there is non-compliance, to revoke whatever permission we're granting, and there's not any legal non-conforming use issues that you have sometimes with zoning ordinances. And so most of what would be authorized for a facility that would operate in the city would come through that police power ordinance. At least that's what our discussion has been and what we contemplate.
What kind of timeline are you looking at? Is this a year down the road, or are you looking for, do you have a timeline?
We'd like to get started, we'd like to get started as soon as possible. So licensing, a lot of the licensing has to be in before November, so that's really, to make a decision on what we're gonna do and where we're gonna do it. We're making decisions in other municipalities this month on what we're doing. When would the project start? The project would probably start after the first of the year.
That's when the licenses are actually gonna be issued, isn't it, after the first of the year?
Correct.
December 15th, I think, is the
That's
date
correct.
we're looking at.
Yeah, that's the earliest, right?
That's
So
the-
with anything, it's,
First of the year is
Yeah,
safe to say.
that's what we're expecting, is no sooner than then. December 15th is what we say is the soonest it could be, but like anything, things take a lot longer than you expect them to.
How many licenses are you eligible to receive?
There's no limit on how many we can receive. It's really up to the municipality.
And the size of the building, what it can handle.
So if you had 2 licenses would allow you to grow twice as many plants?
Right.
Does
3,000
that
plants.
equate to more employees or less employees?
Absolutely, more
Absolutely.
employees.
Yeah, every license is a minimum of 5 employees.
And that's not including anything with processing, security. That's just talking like on the grow level, you're looking at approximately 5 employees just for cultivating alone. But then you have to add security, and you're gonna add more processing, you're gonna add different level,
Bookkeeping.
bookkeeping, accountants. I mean, it's the whole, every time we add another license, it's hiring more people in different fields.
How many licenses can it have in that building? Do you say?
That building could probably have 6, based on that, with 2 levels.
We're working with Jim, the architect, to see how we can streamline that, because obviously the more licenses we can turn them loose, the more ability there is to create.
So if we were to approve an ordinance to allow this activity, how soon would we need to get it approved? What's our drop dead? You said you needed a decision in November, but it's already,
Yeah, ideally for us, it would be, before November, but I don't know if that's a realistic timeline for you guys.
It's going to be, well, a couple of things. We'd have to turn around a draft ordinance relatively soon, and I don't know what the city attorney's schedule is. I don't know if the first meeting in November is realistic or not, but then we have to have, once, after that's done, then we need 2
readings.
presentations of the ordinance. So we may, it would be on the fast track to get it done by the end of the year, I would think.
In addition, we've discussed a zoning ordinance component, which would require a public hearing, 2 public hearings, and some notice. So these would work in tandem. That's what I would envision if council gave us a direction. The police power ordinance, which is something that council will decide upon, and then the zoning ordinance amendment that first would have to go to the planning commission. These would be working in tandem, but both of them would take some time, certainly.
I think the consensus, the last time we discussed this, was opposition to dispensing function within the city. Is there a change in that consensus, or are we still in opposition to dispensing at this time?
I think we should.
I would not want to see any dispensaries in the city. And I said it once, I'll say it again. I'm against it.
You have any objection to growing and processing?
yes and no. So I'm on the fence.
Okay.
Now, if we didn't approve the dispensary, though, it wouldn't stop the grow, right?
That's correct.
Or it wouldn't,
Would
okay,
not stop.
so.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Can I ask, do we have council consensus to begin the planning and zoning in the ordinance process for marijuana, medical marijuana growing and processing?
If that's council consensus, we'll move forward.
I just want to throw one thing out. I want to ask you a question, Mayor Smith. I don't think this needs to go to the ordinance committee first. I think it would just slow down the process. I think I would like to see the whole council engaged in the discussions on it, rather than
Okay.
having our 3-member ordinance board meet.
Thank you.
And I'll just work with the city attorney on an appropriate timeline.
Yes.
We'll bring it back as soon as we can.
That'll also give us an opportunity to hear back from the public as to what their feelings are and go from there.
I'm not convinced yet, so I need some information. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
All right?
Good.
Let us know what you need.
How accessible are you guys for information?
Well, I think it's the start of a process, and nobody's obligated to anything at this point. But the more details that come forth and the more understanding, the more we're able to look at the zoning and the enacting ordinance, the better people are prepared to make a decision.
I do want to just appreciate the stories. I do have a child that's has a seizure disorder and autistic and ADHD, so I do have the same similarity issues. So I do appreciate the backstory.
I do. I have an 89-year-old mother and a 93-year-old father, and I really think my dad would probably benefit greatly. But anyway, those are all heartwarming stories, and I appreciate hearing them. But this is a decision that we need a lot of public input on. I'm sure we'll get it. So,
We're happy to answer any questions. Again, open door policy. We can exchange numbers, and we're there to answer any questions. The better you guys understand and know who we are, and we can be on the same side as the desk as you. Any questions that we can answer, we're happy to do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item D, Mr. Taylor, discussion on economic development funding.
We've had presentations from AES, we've had presentations from the chamber, and this was placed on council's agenda for an opportunity for council to discuss economic development going forward. So I would leave it up to council to begin the discussion.
Okay. We have had a lot of opportunity, and we have funded AES through the end of December through the existing 3-year contract period. All depends on what people would like to do going forward.
I guess I will throw out there that I feel that we do need to give AES a chance with their new plan, and but I would say the contract should not be 3 years. I think it should be a shorter, maybe a year.
Go on an
just to see.
as-needed basis.
Yeah, just for see how it.
I think if council was during the budgeting process to set aside an amount of money for the economic development efforts, and if we look at our strategic plan and prioritize what we want to do, and actually go through an RFP process and say, here's what we're looking to do, who's interested in doing that for what amount of money, what are we looking at in potential grants and other things, and in doing it on a per item basis. We may be able to be more specific and measurable and see some of the results that that we hope to see in the future. I hate to lock into one group over another group. I know everybody's made pretty convincing pitches and promoted themselves well. Everybody works in tandem. You know, we at DDA, we've got our Chamber of Commerce, we've got AES. Been a lot of collaboration in the past. Other comments?
I don't like the 17-person council.
No.
No, I don't either.
Absolutely.
18,
That's what,
whatever it is.
but I do trust Tamara.
I don't think it's a matter of trust to me.
Well, it is to me, though.
Yeah.
You know, it is to me.
I just have a question. Maybe, I don't need an answer right now, Lisa, or maybe Mr. Taylor can answer it. Sometimes confusing to me that we are taxpayers in the county, and if the county funds you, what services are we going to receive, and what, when we contract you, it kind of gets mixed up in my head. What are we paying for over and above what? Am I making myself somewhat clear?
I do understand that because I have been in village government before that pays for, you know, my taxpayers always paid for township taxes as well and county. So I understand the question. And that's one of the reasons for the change in the model, because you would choose the projects you would have us work on. And those projects, we would give you, you know, a defined contract per se to say, this is the scope of work. These are the timelines. Here's what the costs we're going to need to get that project off the ground. Here are the deliverables. So there'll be those benchmarks built right up on the front end of that. So whichever you wanted us to work on, if you wanted us to work on a business growth program, as I gave some examples on my letter, whatever you would want us to work on is what we would work on, and it would be specific to your needs. So you customize what you want us to work on. We address that on a case by case. You mentioned Veterans Park, you mentioned tennis courts, various different things that we should be working on, or identify those for us. We'll put together, through your RFP process, we'll put together our proposal for that. You can assign projects to us based on what you feel your priorities are. And I heard a lot about, you know, in talking with you and the opportunities I've had to speak here, and speaking with those of you I've had the opportunity to speak with in person, I've tried to address the concerns that you've all brought to us with, yes, we're revising and we're doing kind of a whole new strategy. We are restructuring the board. We are going to probably do some bylaw changes and things like that internally, but also be more accountable ourselves so that we can be more accountable to each of our clients. So by doing this model, the fee-for-service model, we would be specifically giving the city a project or a program that they're asking for. So if you want us to work together collaboratively on a countywide initiative, that's fine. If you want us to do a specific issue, address something specific within the city limits, that's what we would address.
And what I'm trying to say is, in reality, that if the county decides to fund you at whatever level, we as a city taxpayer are funding you also.
Correct.
What do we get back from, how does that figure in?
You would be able to drive the initiatives that you want us to work on, versus if the county funds us, then they would drive the initiatives that they want us to work on. So you have a specific project that you want us to work on, might not be exactly the same as what the county priorities are. They might be a little bit different. So again, the business growth, you want us to work on city-related business growth, that would be a program. We could put something together for that that's specific to the city.
I have some questions for a chamber representative.
Sure.
Hate to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, Crystal, back me up if I say something wrong.
Okay.
I'm Dennis McCarthy from the chamber.
Really glad you're here tonight, and glad you heard the presentation on the redevelopment of the Manistee Iron Works. And I would be very interested, since you have 300 members in the chamber, to know what their reaction is and how they could take this and make it a real asset and a positive in our community. So I'm looking I would really like an up or down endorsement or some feedback, some positive and some constructive feedback from the chamber, because I think they're the ones that can really measure how well this will go. So, and
If you're asking me to
promotion.
comment on behalf of the chamber, I would have to go back to our board, but I can.
Oh, I understand,
Sure.
totally, but I would want you to.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Everybody's a stakeholder.
Yep.
The DDA, every citizen who lives here, every business that's here should be a stakeholder. And this is a big project, and it could be a huge opportunity, and we have to manage it well. And there's a lot that goes, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot that goes into it.
And anecdotally, we are working right now with the Portage Point Inn. We've met with, and I know AES is as well, but we are, working on a letter to local authorities to support the Portage Point Inn and, their efforts out there as well. So we're taking stands and supporting development in that way.
Right. Because I do see that there's a lot of positives with working with with a lot of successful people within your membership who probably have some real strong ideas on how we can best promote Manistee County to increase revenues here, which is, building onto our businesses and adding employees, increasing our population, uncapping the properties, the whole 9 yards. That's what we want in the way of economic development. So I think that in many ways, your proposal is very interesting to me on that level. So feedback on this huge project would be helpful.
Yep, I would think we'd be prepared to and we've got a meeting Thursday, and
Okay.
I guess I'm tagging on to your comments. I want to make sure I answer your question, but I think our angle on what we've proposed is really one of bringing in money and the stakeholders we have as members, who are 300+ business owners, and working with those folks to bring new money into the community, new jobs and those things. And so we're not saying that we don't appreciate what AES has done as far as infrastructure and corridor plans and grant work. I think we're all very appreciative of those efforts, but we are also trying to say, from a private business standpoint, and I spent this week talking to the general manager of Arcadia Bluffs, the owner of Portage Point Inn, 3 new businesses in town. Our company is putting in money into Onekama, and so the networks we have with people, I think we're not tapping that, and that's not a fault of anybody. I just think that's something we have not looked at. And I mentioned before in our meeting, we've got vacationers here who come up who have resources downstate. How are we working with those folks? We should have a list of 100 people in this county that have investments here or investments in other parts of the state, and we need to make sure we know those folks, so when they're looking to grow or do something, retire up here. I heard one gentleman say he wants to retire up here. Well, we need to find those people and make sure that they want to invest in this community. So I think that's the angle we've approached. Again, it's not that we feel that anyone's done anything wrong, but at the same time, can we streamline what we're doing under one organization?
And I really do appreciate a lot of the work that AES has done. I think they've reached us to a level where we're ready for a bend. We need to really concentrate on marketing, and I think putting it in the hands of the business people is not a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. So just want to see what else you can bring to support that. And I do like the idea of working with AES on a case-by-case basis. I think we can really fine-tune that.
But
It's an opportunity.
I kind of like the idea of putting projects out there and letting people bid on them to also see what sort of economy we can get and what kind of talent we can get to work on a particular basis. But I think
that's a
an
really good
important aspect.
observation. I think that's a good idea, putting it out for bid.
I mean, when I go get my roof done, I don't go to just one contractor. You try and get a variety of thoughts and processes and see what people bring to the table. Having money available, having it identified in the budget, allows us to focus that resource and focus on projects, as Lisa said, and look at our timelines and our deliverables and what we're getting for it.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks.
We do have a surplus and a budget of about $24,000 for economic development.
We still have that, I think, roughly $23,000, one half of our annual commitment set aside.
Okay. Is anyone else that has any particular direction they want to go with that? Or-
If what I'm hearing, you're looking for the next budget, so instead of funding AES, the way I feel we should at least fund them the rest of this billing cycle, the rest of the 6 more months. That's where I feel. If you feel that you want to go on a contract or something, but I don't think you should just like bid this job to this person, bid this job to this person. We need to have, we're gonna hire them for a year, hire them for a year, but not have this constant. That's where I'm saying, and then that's where I think I'm seeing what you're saying. Am I understanding what you're saying?
Yes, you are.
Well, AES is also saying it. They're saying they're requesting, they're changing their way of doing business. AES is no longer requesting an annual retainer fee, as we have in the past. They're looking for doing certain jobs.
But that's not to say we could in the next year be looking at 6 projects and bid 6 projects and AES get all 6 projects. You know, whoever's the best quality. It's not necessarily who's got the best price, but whoever has the best qualifications to perform the service we're looking for is probably who we're going to contract to get the service. But I think to lock it down and say this is an exclusive, even with our contractor of record, we have an option to go outside that in bid jobs, I believe, even on all those contracts, depending on the scope of work. Is that not correct?
Yeah, the only, that's a good process in my mind for specific projects, that you're identified in strategic plan. The only concern I would have is how we would handle it if, using this proposed development for the ironworks, all of a sudden they appear at our doorstep and we need some assistance. We certainly can't bid that out and be time sensitive. So we'd have to figure out that part of it. That's the only concern. What you're suggesting is great for identified projects that council has in mind, and we could bid something out like that, that would work. I just want to make sure we also recognize that there's going to be some things that just drop in our laps and we may need some assistance on, and how do we handle that?
How did you handle the ironworks?
How would I?
How did you?
How did I? It was handled mostly in staff, and then I reached out to Tim Urban because I knew he had some contacts in this area, and he met with the group.
My concern is how would we budget for that kind of, project by project basis? How would?
Yeah, 27% of what the county is paying is actually from the city taxpayer. So, and I look at it and I think Mayor Pro Tem Zielinski was bringing up the point, okay, if the county funds and the city doesn't fund, as we have in the past, the city's still going to get services. Onecoma's been getting great value. They haven't put anything extra in the pot, but Bear Lake got a great promo in quarter thing. They haven't thrown anything extra in the pot. Everybody's getting things, and I think I understand the rationale that the city's kind of the economic center of the county, but the city's also 3.3 square miles out of 457 square miles in the county, and 25% of the population. So. You get a lot of feedback, at least I do, from people that think that we're double assessed by paying in addition to what we pay through our county taxes for this service. So I think you'd be well served to reach out to ask for assistance because we're already paying for it.
we need to think about how we're gonna handle it. That's the only point I was making.
I guess the only thing I have to say, whether we go to the chamber or we go AES, the city needs to have a contract. We need a champion. That's what we need. That's what I want. That's all I want.
I have a couple questions related to AES. This is actually taken from the minutes, Benzie County, August 8th, 2017. And Tim Irwin is their contact. He was referencing the new project in Benzie County. It's expert fulfillment, where they were going to create 20 to 30 jobs from a business owner within Benzie County. He wanted to stay in Benzie County. I understand all that. But Mr. Irwin says this is exactly what we need in Benzie County. Tomorrow he will meet with the development team regarding a housing analysis for affordable housing, 48 rental unit complex, and we'll talk soon about senior housing, affordable senior housing. They will be hosting a housing workshop in September to bring together governments, developers, and investors to better understand what developers and investors need to educate communities about housing. Also, it states in here, AES will be hiring an executive director to replace him. He will continue relationships with some key projects. Now, that's up in Benzie County. What key projects? I know Tim is not with AES anymore. It's my understanding he's more like a free agent or a consultant that's out there. What is he still going to stay connected to any projects here in Manistee?
At this point, we don't have any ongoing projects that we're paying Tim for here in Manistee, but he has identified some and connected some developers to some projects here. And if there's an opportunity and he can do that and bring people to the table, we would certainly work with him because he's got a lot of benefit and a lot of talents and skills. But as of right now, he's on his own, and we're just trying to identify at what phase we are in the projects that he was working on and what part he's going to continue with on his own, what part AES will continue with working on, and who is actually going to fund those. The model that I presented to you on a fee for service, that's going to be across the board. So Benzie has some initiatives they want us to work on. They'll also have to identify what projects they want us to work on and how the funding will assign a price to that, and that will assign that across the board. That'll be our model for everyone. So that way, it will be equal to everyone, and it's not just exclusive to the city or to anyone else. That way, you're getting exactly what you pay for, as far as you're not carrying the burden of overhead, or the county's not carrying the burden of overhead. It's spread across the board.
Do we know who's going to be the consultant to Benzie County then?
Right now,
For AES.
Beckett and Rader has been contracted to work with Benzie and Wexford County on behalf of AES to take on that portion, all those projects that were identified in those two communities. So anything new that comes up, we'll have to handle on a case by case and figure out how it's going to get funded and that kind of thing. But as of right now, all of the projects that were outstanding are under the direction or under the heading of Beckett and Rader as a consultant to AES to take care of those. So it's John, Ike, Angeli, and I think Betsy's working on some of those. So,
Okay, well, thanks.
yeah, and they're dedicated to those projects in those counties. So we're focused on what's happening here right now. So
I really see economic development as something that needs to be advertised for and aggressively pursued. So, again, I totally agree with what you're saying, Chip. I want a champion, too. I want to hit a home run. I mean, we really need to bring revenues up, and the way to do that is to grow jobs. And here in Manistee County, even if it's outside our city limits, it's still going to impact the city in a positive way by adding jobs in the county. So I want a sales force of people that are strong enough to go out and bring those network business connections to Manistee.
agreed.
And I'm sure there are many different ways to have that champion, by identifying projects, by listening to, if you have suggestions and identifying projects. That's also championing. I mean, there's different ways to get to the end, I guess.
I agree.
Okay.
And I suggested that maybe business growth would be a program that the city would want to identify and specifically tackle bringing new jobs and bringing new businesses here. That might be a program that might be the first one you tackle and ask us to do. We've done a lot of planning for you. We've done a lot of facilitating of different groups. We've done some one-on-one business consulting over the time. But maybe that is a good initiative to have us start with, because we feel that we can do that and we would do well at it. So
How would you price that? How would you do an ongoing? How would you price that?
basically, we would dedicate a certain amount of hours toward that program and tag that over a period of time,
Okay.
and then assign a price to it, basically, but based on our rate, that, you know, what our cost rate is, and present that to you. The key there is going to be the timelines, the scope, you know, the expectations, so that it's laid out for you upfront, who your contacts will be, that type of thing. Because you need to have regular communication with us. You need to know clearly in writing who is handling what portion of that, what the timelines are for different things, and how much time, you know, you expect us to be working on things. If you're wanting meetings, you want us to attend meetings or facilitate meetings, public meetings or anything like that, that'll all be identified in there.
Sometimes I think it's best if we take a step back and just let capitalism develop. Well, we're going to have some changes with the brewery opening. We're going to have some changes if this project goes through at the Ironworks. We're going to have, that'll be big changes. So there's going to be other people that will have ideas on how to capitalize off of that.
Sure.
So I don't want to get in the way of that by paying somebody to kind of figure things out, when we may have entrepreneurs in the area that are going to naturally want to develop. And I'm not trying to say that you're wrong in any way, but I'm
No.
trying to say that sometimes the best thing to do is to just let that grow on its own.
And I can appreciate that. And I recently read a lot of documents, but the original study that when the group that was AES was part of the chamber back in 2006 or something like that. And the reason they did a study, they paid someone to do a study on how, you know, they interviewed the communities on why this was a good idea to move to this model. And one of the things that was identified in this study 10 years ago was that AES is a neutral party, a neutral convener that could facilitate with everyone and work with everyone without having that feeling of competition between different groups or things like that. And it identified the roles of the chamber, the DDA, the CVB, and that we were kind of like, you know, the overarching group that kind of pulled everybody together and worked toward economic development. And I would really like to see us, you know, have that opportunity again to continue doing that, and just in a different way, on a project by project model, because I think that just makes everyone more accountable. You're giving us a specific task and we're giving you specific deliverables that's all identified. So I feel like we can all still accomplish the same goal. We're just looking at it maybe in a different model. And it's a little bit, I guess, out of the box. I'm definitely an out of the box person. So I feel like no matter what happens, we have the opportunity to all work together to promote. And there's a lot of energy in this room. You've already had some really awesome presentations. You have more things coming up that are exciting. So there's a lot to springboard off of to take a program that you want us to work on, or if you want to give a program to us and a program to the chamber and say, you work on this and you work on this, you know, there's a lot of opportunity there for us still to work together.
I don't know, I kind of like the case-by-case scenario. There's accountability for the AES or the chamber council. This council, I won't be on it anymore, but the council will drive what's going to those two groups, and the accountability falls on you. So I would like to see it.
I haven't felt, and I'm just going to be honest, and I'm not trying to be mean-spirited or anything, but I have not had a good feeling that the DDA and the Chamber and AES, have I left anybody out, has worked well together to date. I don't think that they've shared information as timely as they should, and so I haven't seen that cooperation, and that worries me because I have to look at that and then take an enormous leap of faith to say, okay, they can do it now. And I'm still very concerned about the fact that ASE is going to be representing Benzie and Wexford. I still have a problem with that. I understand the leveraging of things, but I do think that everybody who lives in this county is a stakeholder, and we're all going to have to play on the same team. So that's how I feel right now.
Well, I've had similar concerns, but now with this new, which was just presented tonight, with AES no longer requesting an annual payment, somehow I feel better about that. I feel better about projects. As far as initiative and people causing things to happen, there's a lot of things happening right now without anybody doing anything.
Right.
I know 2 investors who have bought property and are speculating and think Manistee is the hidden jewel and been kept a secret too long, so they're buying things up, they're doing things. Picking projects, having accountability, timelines, getting things done, I don't think is a bad thing. I think it makes everybody work harder.
Well, and as I stated in my letter to you all, if you want to go with a business growth program, then I could easily find a new consultant that focuses on that area to bring them in to focus on business growth. If that's a program that you want to do, and they would be dedicated to programs in Manistee, that's doable. We dedicated someone to Wexford and Benzie for the same way. So it's something that we could easily do. You ask for someone to be all in on Manistee, and we've provided you an option for that. So if that's a program that you want to move forward on, or if there's something we hadn't thought of, or a suggestion that, we do something different, then we're happy. I think we've shown that we're flexible. I think the board's moved forward on doing some restructuring. They're not quite there yet, but I think at our next board meeting, we'll have a lot of that on the agenda to deal with. As far as the 17 members, that's not really a workable board. They can't get a quorum, I'm sure. I haven't had time to delve into all that yet. Hopefully maybe on day 8, I'll work on that. But we have a board meeting coming up at the end of the month, and we plan on having quite a few items on the agenda to address some of that restructuring. So that should address that portion. But I think we've been pretty responsive to the different comments and the different concerns that you've had. And again, I just would like the option to show you that we are willing to go with this model and show you that it can be a success.
I'd like to go one step further in I may have mentioned this to you before, but I'll say it again, is that we sat here, or I sat here, I'll speak for me, I sat here and I sometimes have all these visions of the pie in the sky sort of thing. I need somebody to make sure that I'm dealing with reality and that what I'm thinking about is achievable. And if it's not achievable in a reasonable amount of time, when is it achievable? How do I get there? I need somebody to keep me in check of what's really happening, if that makes any sense.
It does, and that's where I think the timeline comes into place to make sure that whatever document we provide as an engagement document, that we have all that identified on there, who you're communicating with and what the timelines are and what the deliverables are. Because that's where, maybe that piece that was missing with us before, again, I don't know all of the history. I have read a lot of documents since I've been there, but I do not have privy to all the different things that have happened over the time. All I can tell you is moving forward, I will try to improve all of that and make the accountability and transparency much easier for you all so that you can see what we are working on and that you can see the result of our work.
Communication, I agree. Communication's lacked in the past, and that's, I think, where this council has maybe turned a little sour on. So improved communication.
Yep.
I think your proposal for fee-based rather than retainer fee. That has that merit with me. But the aspects, gee, if you want tennis court refinished, we can talk about that. That's what was in the contract we did 3 years ago. If you want a fishing pier, we can talk about that. Well, that was in the contract 3 years ago. It's not new things. It's things that were in the past contract that were not achieved. And that's when I come back and say, when we identify projects, we need to be more specific in identifying projects and what the timeline is and when it's going to be done and what the penalty is if it's not done.
Sure. Agreed.
Because the majority of those contract items were just kind of fell by the wayside.
All
Well-
goes back to accountability.
Yep, and I can't address any of those because I have no idea what happened, and I didn't have the time to kind of dig those up yet because I wanted to get a good proposal in front of you for tonight and answer some of the questions that you had asked us for accountability. So, I hope that we can move forward and try to just do that fee-based, stick to the projects you give us, make sure that we're meeting those deadlines and those measures and that scope of work on each one of those. I have been trying to reach out to each of you as I've had a chance. I've reached out to some of the county members, some of the other stakeholders, and I will try to get with all of you as soon as I can get there. So I'm just hoping that we can make the communication available, and I'm open. You can communicate with me at any time in any way. I don't have business cards yet, but I will get that all to all of you. And I have all your contact information, so I think my email is up and running now, so I can shoot you all an email and let you have my contact information. You can have my cell phone number. I have no problem with that. I'll come to whatever meetings I need to be here for. I want to make sure that I'm involved so that communication piece, whether or not we have a consultant working on your programs or your projects, I still want to be involved to make sure that communication piece carries through.
I like to see things done in a timely manner, and I like things to happen in a way that we can react to them. When AES, for example, contracts with another provider to do a study for us, like say Fourth Economy for the economic strategy for Benzie and Manistee County, that looks like it was completed by the end of last year. And then we just saw the complete report was emailed to us September 19th. That's not, I know we got the executive summary, and that was great, but it's important to be able to see all of the numbers in the entire report. It's about 30 pages long, but it's good information. It should have gone to every stakeholder.
So I dug a little bit on that. I haven't had time to ask Tamara about that, but I dug a little bit on that, and that program started a year ago and was just completed. So that's what I found anyway on the notes that we have at the office. So I haven't actually asked Tamara on the timeline. Is that accurate?
No, I think Linda is more accurate.
Okay.
And I think you are right. I was very happy that you invited me to come and give that presentation. And perhaps we were remiss in not giving it sooner. The soonest we could have given it probably would have been June, because that's when it was really handed off to you. So if that's what you mean by more recently being done. But July, August, September, we got there and we got it in front of you. Your agenda has been pretty packed as well. So
Sure.
I was very happy that you were interested in hearing the results of that.
There is something in their packet, in the report, that says November 22nd, 2016. So I made an assumption that that's when it was completed. So I don't know when it was turned over to you. But when you're talking about paying somebody $40,000 to do a study, you want to see it as quickly as possible.
Right. Yeah,
And
I
if it was
agree.
completed last year, it should have been delivered to you really fast.
Well, not too dissimilar to how Rob and I just finished the corridor plan, and we have a 45-minute presentation. We were glad to at least have gotten 5. So if you ever want to see the full presentation, we'd be more than happy to give you the entire thing so that you can do exactly what you're saying, which is see the results of the work that you've been paying for.
Yeah, I think this is the third time I've seen pieces of it, so, and I think I saw the whole thing before. Thanks.
I just,
Oh.
I just got one other.
Sure.
I just want to look at this coming from the back door, so to speak. So if we would retain you on a fee basis, you would still come, if something was out there and you felt it fit, you would still come to us and present it, or get with a hold of Mr. Taylor and say, gee, maybe you ought to consider this, or hiring us for this, or,
Of course we would.
Okay, that's-
Absolutely. That gives us work, so of course we would.
I know, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. Our goal is not, our goal is community and economic development here. We want to promote the community. We want to promote the development. We want to help create the jobs and create the quality of life here. That's our goal. We aren't looking to say, fine, we're not going to work with you that at all. That's not at all the case. Actually, it's quite the opposite. We're trying to make it easier for you to work with us and us to be more accountable to you. That's what the goal is, because we do want to work with you and we do want to promote and bring jobs and do that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? What does council want staff to do or prepare or work on? Something along the line of a vendor of record on a fee for service basis, or?
Whatever the council wishes.
We have consensus? I mean, what we'd like to see?
Well, that's what I think that's the best way we could utilize AES,
I think the model's gonna have to go that way countywide, because I think even AES has identified that, okay, the county's providing, you know, a stipend up front, and everybody's pulling off that, but other than Fowler Township contributing in their recent plan and the city's contribution, no other communities are throwing any money in the pot or operating on a fee-for-service basis either. They're kind of feeding off of the tax flow in the city's paying a higher fare as a result of that. But
So is the council looking at staff putting out a bid for economic development services and look on it on an hourly basis and have different organizations bid on that? Is that what I'm hearing?
that's how we do the contractor of record, isn't it? I mean, that's how we do our electrical and heating and
I thought I heard her say that.
engineering services.
I thought I heard her say that you would give us, we'd tell you what we wanted and you would tell us what it cost.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying,
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor?
Well, I was
I'm just confused. It's
I'm
just
just getting, I was just throwing out a possibility of just what's your hourly rate to help us in economic
Okay.
development
Yeah.
services.
Okay.
And the Councilmember Goodspeed said he didn't necessarily want to throw something out, and whoever is interested in bidding on it, bid on it. He would prefer to have a single source, so kind of like a vendor of record.
Well, and that's how we do get our vendor of records, is set out, here's the services we want provided, what's your hourly rate, type of thing.
I'm not trying to be negative, but no matter what we do, if we go with the chamber or we go with the AES, we're still paying a higher fee because we're in the city. So, that being said, where the council chooses to go, we may not like it.
paying a higher fee, yes and no. We've paid an awful lot of money with a little benefit that I can see. And the county's paid a lot of money, over $1 million with, and if you listen to their rhetoric or their meetings, they're kind of concerned about what their return was. I think paying somebody for what they're doing is not a bad thing.
Would you like staff to put out a
A bid,
bid?
ask select a vendor of record for economic development?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
May I recommend that maybe you take an approach of picking a project and having us provide some pricing for a project of some sort, and then providing an item on there for hourly rate for services beyond the scope of that project, or if you needed us on an as-needed basis. That might be a way to see what it would look like time-wise, that we would be able to allocate resource-wise and that kind of thing for a project. And then anything above and beyond that, you know, if you needed something from us, you know, and then we can provide an hourly rate, if that would work.
You know, things are not necessarily, I'm just going to speculate a little here, that the hourly rate's not going to be the absolute driver. I think also it's the reputation.
Yeah, there's
and
all
there's a
parts
whole
of that.
package that has to be considered.
Right.
As to, you know, what we've got in the past, because I understand, and as Councilmember Goodspeed said, I said trust wasn't an issue. It's not that, I have trust in Tamara also. I have trust in a lot of people. I'm disappointed we didn't get more done in certain areas over a period of time, but that doesn't make me think less of her or the capability. Or even going forward, working with her again. You know, it's it just gets to a point where, you know, we want to see the results from what we're paying for.
Sure, and I know that the hourly rate isn't going to be the driver necessarily, so that's why I suggested putting a project RFP together and let us just pick a project and let us provide a solution to the project and what our price would be to solve the problem or the project or program that you would like to have us do. And then anything above and beyond that, you would know what our rate is. Our rate's going to be the same across the board because, you know, we'll flush out the exact number and put that, you know, what our overhead and all that is. So, yeah, I mean, some projects will cost more if the travel is going to require us to go to, you know, Benzie. For those programs are going to cost more if there's meetings in Benzie because the travel will be more and things like that. So, you know, obviously that is a way to kind of identify that the costs are allocated accordingly to each program or project that we're doing.
Well, you know, again, we could do it on a bid basis, you know, just give us your bid for doing it. We could do a request for qualifications and then select a qualified firm and then negotiate the payments, the payment fashion, whether it's an hourly rate, whether it's per, you know, on a case-by-case basis, or we could just go on a straight retainer. So those are three options that the council could consider. So would you prefer going with put out a request for qualifications, get interested parties? They're going to have to sell us on why they're the best organization to engage with. Do you want to do it on a like we do with normally with, you know, what's your hourly rate for doing this general services, or do you want to do a retainer?
I would really like it on qualifications. I think that's the most important aspect.
Well, AES is not offering a retainer anymore, right?
Correct.
Well, that's what they're not going to offer, but if what I'm saying is council could put out a packet that they want to engage someone or on a retainer basis. That's just another option. That's the point I was putting out. Those are the only three options I can think of right now.
I would still prefer the pay for service as opposed to throwing $30,000 or $40,000 out there and waiting to see what we get. That hasn't proved very successful in the past.
So is that the consensus to go with a request for qualifications packet?
That would work in regards to AES, but we haven't really had a discussion on the Chamber's proposal. I mean,
well,
right now we seem to be focused on funding for AES or how we would fund.
This would work for anybody. We're basically, a request for qualifications is to convince us you're qualified, you have the abilities, and that we should engage with you for the services. And then the next step would then work out the financial aspects of it.
Now, I know the chamber had given us a proposal that included a separate board, and they had given us some numbers for financing. How would you feel like being a participant in this? And I know you can't speak for the board, but you're the only one here I can talk to.
right.
So,
I think our, we propose to just to streamline things, and if you're looking for fee for service based programs, then I guess we would, it's a free market, so we would participate if that's the way council decides to go.
Right.
I
still want to see you guys
I think it's
do
hard to
what you-
say, how do you put you're going to bid going out and reaching out to developers. So is that how many hours you spend on that? I'm a sales guy. I get 10 sales calls, I get told no 10 times. The 11th time I might get told yes. So how do you put a price tag on that? I think that's the challenge I would see happening. But I mean, it's your funding. You've got to be responsible to your taxpayers. So it's your call. But
well, it sounded to me when the proposal first came before us that you guys were willing to go out and do this anyway because you know how necessary it is to promote the county and to reach out to developers.
I mean, our proposal was to streamline, reduce costs. We reduced 30%. Our ask was 30% less. We proposed a separate board, streamlined to 7 to 9 people. We want to hire an executive director and follow that process through. And there's, I guess, 3 facets. One is workforce development, economic development, bringing money in, and I think the third piece is grants and infrastructure and those pieces. And so that would also include some of what AES does. And if you read a recent letter, it was saying, hey, we would look at that AES organization and try to work with that group, that team, because we're not saying that they've done bad work. We're just saying that there needs to be a new structure. So, but if you decide to go with a per project based, proposal or RFP process, then we would review that as well.
Well, do the other council members at least want to somehow demonstrate that they support the initiative that the chamber is trying to take up? I mean, I applaud them for thinking about this and wanting to be the driver on this and want to champion growing jobs and bringing developers here. How do you want to address that? What do you want to say to them?
They made a presentation. I mean, it's not like any other presentation that's made, and you weigh the factors between the organizations that are offering to provide a service and what their cost is and what the resources are, and you make a best guess decision on what's best for the community. I mean, what more are you looking for?
Well, they asked for money, so they're looking for that. So you haven't addressed that in any way. None of us really have.
We haven't addressed the money in any form, and it's like Mr. Saylor said, if we request qualifications from people, then we make a decision on who you want. Then's when you sit down and talk about the money and the length of contract term, or what other stipulations you want to get into for the economic services.
I think each group has their expertise. They're experts in certain areas. You may choose one because they are better qualified than another. You may not choose either. You may decide to go someplace else. I kind of like the idea of paying for what you get.
Any other comments?
I do like the, project by project, but I feel that it's gonna be really hard to figure out how much you're gonna fund for the budget, because you don't know what exactly the new projects are gonna be coming in and how much each is gonna be costing before it's even happening. So that's the only thing that I see that's kind of the background of, yeah, it's great, we're gonna focus on projects, but the money, how do we?
And I agree with you, and it kind of passed through my mind. That's probably by way of a contingency fund. We have some money there that if a big project came along that we really need to get involved in, that, could we go to that money and use it?
Prerogative.
Yeah, so I mean,
So we still will need to have an idea of how much we're gonna give to each project, basically.
well,
We've got a capital improvement plan, you know, so we generally decide through the budgeting process what we want to accomplish in the next year. And generally, those things can be crossed out, but I mean, it's no different than what Mr. McCullough does in the water and sewer department in estimating how many repairs he's going to have or what he's going to do for infrastructure replacement, depreciation in a given year. Are there variations? Sometimes you got more, sometimes you've got less. But you kind of move things around to accommodate that. We have a budget amendment process that allows us to do that, so.
Yeah, and, you know, when you're going project by project, it's gonna be incumbent on council to be really laser focused on what their priorities are and maybe look at putting a list and
What we
ranking
want to
them.
achieve, yeah.
And then decide which ones you wanna work at and focus the economic development agency, whoever it is, on those and develop, and then that would drive your budget for economic development for the year. If we say we want fishing piers and go get grants for them, they're gonna tell us, as I envision it, what that's gonna cost. And then we take that out of that budget that we've set aside.
Other comments? Mr. Goodspeed?
Well, wish I would've read this thing.
Yeah, I kind of read it after I had said anything. We got the letter in front of us and we were just able to read it now.
Yeah, I don't like proposed fees for services. I don't like proposed fees for services at all.
Would we be able to get, so like the plan that we have before us for the update, the strategic plan and implement, can we have like, well, this was what we would have charged for each of this? Just so it gives us a ballpark of what the fees we're looking at?
So the proposal that we gave you last time with kind of the rough number to that, is that what you're referring to?
No, this plan right here, like what's completed, what's gonna be completed, like can there be a cost to that? Because I'm trying to figure out, well, how much is each project gonna
Yeah,
cost?
I mean, I'm not sure what you're looking at. I don't think it's something I provided. But maybe it's something we provided before at a prior meeting?
Yeah, a lot of it's got AES on it, that's. in
Is it
charge of
just the list of things that we've done?
update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the city's strategic plan and an update on this, on the plan. And some of the responsibilities were given to AES.
Right, and that's what I meant, what we're, some of it's ongoing by AES, so what are the costs gonna be if we were to decide to still go with that? So we have some kind of idea of what it's gonna cost.
So I guess if I were in the hot seat and I were budgeting and it were a couple months, I was getting ready to prepare my budget, I would look at my capital improvement plan, I would look at my strategic plan, I would say, I'm gonna put an RFP out for these 10 items and get prices for all 10 and lock the pricing in for that full calendar year or budget year. And then identify the projects based on when those responses come back and say, I know you can't do that now because you're already you're already too far into it, but moving forward on a new year, that's how I would handle it. I would identify those projects when you're ready to do the budget, what you want to work on, and then identify, okay, maybe you can't do all 10, but based on the pricing, you might be able to do 1, 3, 7, and 9. And that might drive your priorities somewhat because you have this one's a top priority, but yeah, you don't quite have enough for number 2, so you're going to move on to a different one. But But that is part of the issue, is now we are putting some of that back on you guys to identify very clearly what you're looking for that future year.
And I think that's what's been lacking a lot of in the past. I blame it on myself as much as anybody, that sometimes we weren't perfectly clear and we just let things go and.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments? Before we take a 5-minute break, we've been at this a little over 2 hours, so.
Could we postpone the rest of it till the next, maybe Mr. Taylor would allow us to postpone his presentation, the last one, until the next work session, is that?
I'll postpone anything that the council wishes.
After 2 hours, that's it, huh?
So,
The only thing though is I have concerns is the new job. The posting states that it's closed on October 23rd. So does that mean that they're going to go through the hiring process before we can actually speak about it?
We're accepting applications until the 23rd, 24th, whatever it is. All right. I can put this discussion on of the quarterly strategic plan. I can put it on the next council agenda, and I can put the discussion on deputy finance, deputy treasurer position on the next agenda.
Okay. And I'm all for leaving. I just want to make sure that.
I want to thank both AES and the Chamber for all their efforts and all their work. It is much appreciated, and this, as you can tell, has been quite a decision for us. So, thank you.
I would like to thank everybody that's here and some of those that have already left, and our council members for their diligence tonight, and I apologize that it took so long.
Listen to 2 hours of AES.
Helps us all gain an understanding. Adjourn.
Wake up, Marky.
How do you turn these things on?
I'm there for you.
No.